Hi, everyone. This is Brody Dittamore from the USA Jobs team. Thank you for joining our session today. This is sort of a continuation of a call that we started about 3 or 4 weeks ago. We're trying to put together kind of interested groups, recruitment teams that want to kind of engage on the topic of recruitment return on investment. What we mean by recruitment return on investment can be both time or financial expenditures that it takes to not only recruit, but to recruit the talent that actually solves the need that your agencies have. With USA Jobs, we love our program, we love our nice site, but we also realize that to bring the right people in and to find those sources of talent, you shouldn't just rely upon USA Jobs. There's a whole ecosystem that we're a part of. And sometimes the talent that you're looking for may not be familiar with how to search for a federal job. They might not actually know about USA Jobs. These could be high performers in the private sector. They could be working for NGOs or nonprofits. And so with that type of experience, we might not expect them to use our site, but then also for different subject matters. They may already be users of sites such as, if you're looking for IT talent, maybe they're on Stack Overflow, and that's how you can start to get into some of the hard-to-fill niches. What we're trying to do is discover ways that we can hopefully see where these sources of talent are and then report back to the entire interagency of, if you're hiring for a certain series, try recruiting from these places, because not only can you get potentially higher numbers of applicants, but what we're really going for are those job seekers who can make it through the process, who can commit to being a civil service employee, and who will stay and make a difference. One of the ways that we found with USA Jobs that helps us to kind of get to this information is by utilizing web analytics metrics. What this means is we're able to capture data on people going into USA Jobs and our affiliated USA Jobs sites. And we can see kind of where they're coming from, impediments that they may have during the search process, and various other high-level measures. What we're using to do this is the Digital Analytics program. This is essentially a customized Google Analytics. But today we have Tim Lowden from the General Services Administration, who leads the Digital Analytics program. We put together a quick workshop that he'll be presenting virtually here, and we're also recording this so that we can make it available to the many other kind of recruitment team members who aren't able to attend today. But this will just give you a basic understanding for what the Digital Analytics program and web metrics can bring to your recruitment process. There's a lot more that's out there, and so we look at this as just the first step of bringing some tools to bear that will help us better understand recruitment ROI. The Digital Analytics program has a lot of their own trainings. There's other trainings that are out there, free, simple ones through Google or through YouTube. But again, this is just one of those tools. What's important here is a mindset to bring data to the recruitment process so that you can review what's happening, make changes, and hopefully then see improvements. So with all that said, I'm really excited to be working with Tim, and I've seen what he's put together here, and I hope everyone else will appreciate this as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Tim.
Great, thanks, Brody. Hopefully folks can hear me right now, and I'm attempting to share. It looks like you all can see my screen. Awesome. Okay, so thanks, Brody. Thanks for having me, and hello to everyone on the call. This is an interesting opportunity for me because I feel like a lot of you are probably folks that have not used or potentially not even heard of the digital analytics program. So I think this hopefully will just give you, as Brody said, a little bit of insight into what our program is and what you can do with it. And I think that we offer a lot of really cool insights that may be beneficial for you as you're determining that ROI of your job opportunity announcements. So firstly, let me see if I can get my screen to move. There we go. So what is the digital analytics program and how is it helpful to me? So as Brody briefly mentioned, DAP, you won't hear me say digital analytics program a million times. So acronyms, of course, in government. So DAP is the federal initiative to aggregate web analytics across basically the entire government federal web space. And so what we do is we offer access to the tool and the data that we collect, which, as Brody mentioned, is Google Analytics. So we have a very, very large Google Analytics account that we purchase here at GSA, and we offer access to that tool free to other agencies. So some of you on the call may already be DAP users, and if you are, thanks for joining. We also offer training on how to use and analyze that data. Implementation support, so that to be a participating site, you actually have to input a small piece of code onto your website. And luckily, USA Jobs is one of the over 5,000 participating federal websites. Individual user support. So for those of you that are on the call, if you are intrigued by what you see today and you want to get access to the digital analytics program, Google Analytics account, you can do that via a registration form that I detail later on in the resources slide. And then we also have, if you have questions about how to use the tool, you can contact us in our individual user support. Finally, we offer a public dashboard, which is at analytics.usa.gov. And if any of you have seen this before, this is where we take some of the data in the Google Analytics account that we have, and we push it to a public-facing website. So you can see this is real time. There are 286,000, almost 287,000 people on our participating websites right now. You can see the top pages at any given moment. This is real-time data. And then there are also things like over the last 90 days, what kinds of technology were people using to access federal government web pages, where are the visitors coming from, top downloads, and things like that. And for those of you that maybe don't have interest in becoming a full DAP user with access to the Google Analytics account, you may be interested in finding your agency in the drop-down and taking a look at what the most popular pages are and sites are in your agency. So that's just something that you can check out in your spare time. Okay, so what does this all mean for you? So basically what DAP is instead of having a tool that records web analytics information, so that is how many times was a page viewed, where did that user come from? So did they come from Google, or did they come from a Facebook post, or did they come from the WashingtonPost.com, something like that? Where did they come from? What technology are they using? What operating system? Are they on a mobile device? All kinds of really tons of data that is very useful in understanding if your users are achieving your goals on your website. So what's interesting is typically you would see an implementation where you'd have the Google Analytics tool on each individual website. But with the digital analytics program, what we've done is we pile all the data from all 5,000 websites into a single account. This has some pros and cons, but one of the pros is that even though you all don't work at OPM, if you become a DAP user, you have access to the data from USA Jobs in our system and all the other websites as well. So what this means is that you can become a DAP user and get information on your JOAs on USA Jobs and find out if your outreach campaigns were being successful, if it was just how many page views it got in general. Like maybe, you ran a post for 2 weeks and you find out it only got, 50 page views, and that you wanted more than that. So you can work to make sure that you are creating JOAs that either already get a bunch of views because they're in a popular job category, or it might encourage you to start advertising those views in other places, maybe monster.com, Indeed, through newsletters, various different places. So today we're going to talk about how to do two things. One is how to view your JOA performance for specific JOAs in the digital analytics program. And then two is how to make sure you are correctly tracking outreach that leads people to USA Jobs to look at your JOAs correctly. And I do want to give like a little bit of a caveat here. As Brody mentioned, we are a program that offers a lot of our own training. We do a webinar every month on the various topics. Mastering Google Analytics is not something I'm going to be able to teach you in the next 30 minutes. But what I tried to create examples that are easy for you to grasp on what's possible. And then we'd love to work with you in the future, if you decide to become a DAP user, to be able to maximize the Google Analytics platform so that you can do analysis on some of these things. But bear with me if some of this seems a little bit complex. I'm editing the webinar here to make sure that we can fit within the time constraints and still show as much as we can. So for number one, how can I view the performance of my JOAs? So what I did for you is I created a reports template, and I have this little bouncy thing here. Get rid of that. If you click on this report template, if you are a DAP user, it will open this tab no matter what, but you won't be able to actually use it unless you're a DAP user. But if you are a DAP user, you would click on this template, and then you would go to here and you would select the OPM agency profile in the government-wide account, which is the Digital Analytics Program account. So because this is USA Jobs, it's a USA Jobs website, the data is located in the OPM agency profile. Our data is all segmented by agency. So you would click there, and I'm not going to do it right now because I already have it, but if you would click there, it would then open up a tab with the Google Analytics interface, and this is what it would look like. So currently, I have a date range set for the last 7 days. And what this report is showing me, what I've set it up to do, is show me page views and total users for anybody who visited a page that starts with USAJobs.gov/getjob/view details, and then it has a number at the end. So for those of you that are very familiar with USA Jobs, you'll know that this is how all the JOAs are listed. Here's an example of one right here, and it's the one I'm going to use for our examples today. You've got a unique number that happens at the end of the URL that corresponds to any specific JOA. So all of the job postings start with USAJobs.gov/getjob/view details if you're not in an agency-specific portal for USA Jobs. So what I've done here is I created this report, and let's say I wanted information about that post that I put up. In this case, it's from the Department of Treasury. It's for a tax analyst. They're hiring well, it looks like there's one vacancy, but there's a bunch of different locations. So if you know this unique number, what you can do with the report that I've created for you is copy it and then come into this search bar here and paste it in. Now, before I hit enter, I just want to show you what we've got in this report. So you can see here in the last week, the job posting that has the most total page views is this one. And I think I can actually show you what it might be. Diplomatic Security Foreign Service Special Agent has 30-some thousand page views in the last week. So that one's a popular one. But for this particular one, I was looking for that tax analyst. Let's say I just want to find information about that. I actually just can do a search for that particular unique JOA number, and the report will then filter to look for that particular number. Okay, so here it is. The main one has 5,600 page views, and you can see there are some interesting other spurious data here, but it's quite a low percentage. That happens because of different ways that you can visit that page within USA Jobs. But the main one with 92% is just the normal /513143300. Now, here's the cool part about the digital analytics program and Google Analytics in general, is that we can get even more data about how visitors got to this page. So I just want to show you very briefly, and this webinar is not designed to show you how to create these reports, but this is how the report is set up. And I've specified that for this one, in acquisition channels, I want not only to know how many page views and users the page got, but if I click through that specific page, I want to know how the traffic got there. And we do this by a dimension in Google Analytics called source and medium. And you're going to see once I click through what that does for us. Got to get this report back up really quickly. Okay, so we'll go back and put in our example for the tax analyst. Oops, actually, I had copied a new thing. So now that's going to be the top one, the diplomatic security officer. That's fine. So I'm going to click through here. And if I choose to click through and drill down a specific page, it's then going to break down those 33,191 page views and tell me how that user got to USA Jobs. So in this case, direct none means that they potentially typed in USAJobs.gov into the URL bar. And then they probably performed a search and they got to that particular post. This is traffic coming from Google. Here's from Facebook, and notice the M here means that it's Facebook from a mobile device. So a lot of people, 4,700, found that particular posting coming from Facebook. We've got state.gov career portal, USA staffing, login.gov, and so on. Now, one thing I want to note here is that this does not mean what we see here. It does not mean that the person came directly to the JOA. This particular report is not showing us this is how many people got here as the first page they see. It could mean that they got to USAJobs.gov in general, and then they did a search, and then they saw the site. But just as a note, we can actually even make that data granular further by adding something called a secondary dimension, and I have a slide for this that will give you an idea of how to replicate it. But I can add a dimension for what's called landing page, which shows you what the first page of a session was. So meaning when someone got to USA Jobs, what was the first page that they viewed? And you can see here, for this particular one, the most popular one, the landing page coming from the Facebook referral, was specifically to the job post rather than to the homepage. And so 4,600 people made it to this JOA directly, not from a search on USA Jobs, not from a search on Google, but directly clicking from Facebook, they made it to that particular JOA. And so this brings, I think, a whole lot of new insight, if you haven't seen it before, into whether or not some of these things that you're trying to do online on USAstaffing.gov, or I've looked at some other ones where they've got information from Monster, information from Indeed, and believe it or not, there's actually 3,100 different combinations of a different source medium and landing page in which somebody saw that JOA. So I know that's kind of a lot, but I wanted to quickly show you how you can kind of do this and what's possible for you to be able to do analysis. Now, if I go back to the beginning of the report here, the first page of the report, I was thinking, okay, what's something else that would be valuable for folks in recruiting like yourself? Beyond where the traffic was coming from online, I thought potentially especially for JOAs where you're hiring in many locations, it may also be beneficial for you all to understand where the person is physically located. And so I created a separate tab in this same report where instead of looking for the acquisition channels when you click through a specific post, you can click through a specific post and see the location of the visit. And for those of you who are interested in knowing, we do not do this via IP addresses. We do it actually via the network that the person is using. We anonymize all IP addresses of visitors to federal websites in this system. So if I were to click through any one of these posts, and we could actually search for my tax analyst, 513, let's do that. I'll go back here, I'll search for that particular JOA. Oh, I think it sounds like some folks need to mute. Okay, so here's my main post, and if I click through that, now instead of showing me where the traffic came from online, it's going to show me where the traffic originated from in terms of city. I've specifically set it to city. So for this post, let's see where we had, there were 20 different locations, so there's lots of different places people might be interested in this particular job. But if we look at the report, we can see this makes sense. Washington, D.C. is the #1 city. Then Los Angeles, New York. Here's Jacksonville. That's pretty interesting. And you can keep going. There are actually 770. And if I expand it, I can click here and expand my rows. It just shows the first 10 to begin with, but I can expand my rows. And you can see all the different places that people came from to view this page. And so again, if you have a job posting where you only have maybe a couple locations, you can see which ones are being searched more and where people, or I guess, which locations are the ones that are drawing the most traffic to that particular JOA. Okay, I know that was a lot. Again, just trying to give you a taste of what we can do. But if you become a DAP user, you'll be able to access these reports, and we can definitely help you try to make sense of them a little bit more. So I told you about this secondary dimension and adding for landing page. That lets you know if somebody made it directly to your JOA or if they started somewhere else within USA Jobs. Okay, I hope that that was a little bit mind-blowing. I can see everyone sitting in their chairs right now just doing this, right? Maybe not. Anyways, that is a really sort of basic, straightforward way of using the Digital Analytics program to view if your JOAs are performing like you'd like. But I also wanted to take this opportunity to tell you about campaign URLs, especially if you're not already using them. So quickly, what are campaign URLs? They are URLs that present a path to a page where you add special parameters, and the data that you add in via those parameters gets sent to Google Analytics to help you better analyze the success of the campaign. And in this case, one thing that I'll specifically be focusing on is you can add what's called a campaign name. And this will make more sense in a moment. So in order to understand how campaign parameters work, we have to first understand what a query parameter in a URL is. So you may have seen, if you've been traveling around the web before, a query parameter, which is basically, if you may have seen question mark signs in a URL and then a bunch of stuff afterward. The way the internet works and the way browsers work is that if I add a question mark on the end of any URL, I can then add on any amount of junk afterward, and if I click enter, it will send me to the exact same page. Because anything after this question mark, and you can only put it at the end of your URL, but after I put that question mark, I can put anything here, and it's still going to show me the same page. Now, the reason this happens is that there are various different tools, Google Analytics being one of them, that uses special terms after a question mark to send data to their system. And the #1 way I see this usually being used is in online on-site search tools. So you might have an on-site search tool where when someone searches on your site, it would have a query parameter with query equals, and then whatever your term was. Let's say it would be test. And then what that does is tell your search indexer to show a search results page that matches the term test. But for our purposes, for Google Analytics, there are actually other special parameters that Google Analytics can see when a page is loaded, and it will record that data. So here's some examples. This is just to show how it works. I could write digital.gov, digital.gov/something, or digital.gov. I can write whatever I want here, and it will still work. But The specific terms for Google Analytics that will record data are these: UTM_source, UTM_medium, and UTM_campaign. And then what you do is you set the data you want to record after an equal sign. So this could be UTM source equals Twitter, and UTM medium equals social for social media, and UTM campaign equals, and you can name it whatever you want. And so what you end up getting are URLs that look something like this at the bottom: DigitalGov.gov, *, UTM source equals newsletter, medium equals email, and campaign equals DigitalGov weekly, DG weekly. And the important thing to remember is that when this data gets sent to Google Analytics, you then can use it to understand, better understand how your traffic is coming into a specific site, and in this case, USA Jobs. So the way we do this is with a tool called the Google Campaign URL Builder, and when you get the slides, you will get the link right here. Otherwise, you can just Google for it, Google Campaign URL Builder. You'll be able to find it. And what you do here is just create a URL by inputting information into these fields, and it concatenates it for you down here. So I have a friend that works at this nonprofit called Rare, and I often use this as an example. But this is just their Our Work page. It shows what they do. And what I can do then, if I worked at Rare, or in your case, whatever agency you work for, if you are posting a link to a JOA in a newsletter or on a social media post or anything like that, you take the normal page URL and drop it in here. So I just copied this right from there. And then you add in a source, medium, and name. Now, in this case, they chose newsletter, or I chose newsletter, and the medium would be email. And they give you an example of what each one is here. A source is something specific. A medium is like email, social media, referral, something like that. And then here's the bread and butter. You get to choose your own campaign name. So for this one, I could put like environment or something like that. And then when I come down here, it concatenates it all for me, so I get this nice URL that now will go to the same page. You'll still see this. It already reloaded, boom, the Our Work page. But now it's telling, when Google Analytics runs on this page, when someone loads the page, it's telling the system to capture these specific things that you set: email, newsletter, and environment. So how can we use that? First, I want to pause to talk about why this is really important. If any of you use link shorteners, as in bit.ly or owly or something like that, and you do not shorten it with a campaign URL, meaning you don't build the campaign URL beforehand. You just take your normal, like you would take this particular post here, you'd copy that, and you'd put a link in to a link shortener. If you use Hootsuite or something like that, or I know some of you don't do this marketing specifically, but this is maybe worth passing on to your communication teams. If they shorten a link without those campaign parameters, what happens is as someone clicks on it, when they get to the link shortening service like bit.ly or owly, it strips what we call the referrer away. So it removes the information that when they arrive to the final destination right here, it removes the information that would tell Google Analytics they came from a Twitter post or they came from an email, something like that. So the only way that you can make sure Google does get that data is by using these campaign URLs. Because if you take this long one and then you shorten it in bit.ly or owly, when someone lands on the final destination, the page opens up like this, and Google sees these things, and it says, oh, capture this data. So what does this all mean? Well, I'm giving you air fives right now because I also created you a report to show you how these campaigns work in the digital analytics program. So here's what we've got. I set up a report, and I'll very briefly show you what it looks like. But I set up a report to show me page views and users, and the starting dimension that I want to see is the campaign name. In Google Analytics, they just say campaign, but that's the campaign name. And then it will show me the page they landed on and where the traffic is from. And in this case, I just have it across all of the USA Jobs site. So what that means is if you created a campaign URL, let's say, I'm going to give you a hypothetical. Let's say you were posting a JOA on a Twitter post. So you say, hey, we've got this job opening for a tax analyst at the Department of Treasury. You should apply. And you send it in a tweet. If you have a campaign URL and you named it something such as Department of Treasury Jobs or Treasury Jobs, and you named it that campaign name, what this report will then show you is all the campaign names first, and then when you click through, it will show you the specific pages that you sent people to. So if any of you are able to follow where I'm going with this, you could, rather than have to go to this report and look up every single individual number, 513-143-300, you could just create a campaign name where every time you tried to direct traffic to that particular JOA, you could give it a campaign name that was unique. And so what we see here in this report is a list of campaign names that are already happening on USA Jobs. But what I noticed in these is that they're not particularly unique to the agency that's driving the traffic. So as you can see here, one of the campaign names is Indeed. And so I'm assuming that this means some agency is doing advertisement of their jobs on Indeed.com. And they are linking to those particular jobs, to their posts on USA Jobs via a campaign URL, and they are calling the campaign name Indeed so that they know, and this is good, so that they know how many page views are coming from Indeed.com. And this is only over the last month. This one's the month of September, this particular report. So Indeed.com drove 486,000 page views for all the pages that they labeled with this campaign name. Now, I'll tell you, I actually clicked through here, and I saw all the different traffic that was being driven via this campaign. And you'll see a bunch of JOAs that will appear here. So they're directing a lot of people to these JOAs, and I checked them, and I will tell you it's actually TSA. It's the Transportation Security Administration, part of DHS, that is running this particular campaign. So if I were them, and some of them may be on the call, if I were them, one thing that I would do, firstly, I'd congratulate them for using campaign URLs to better track how their postings are being viewed. But I would say you may want to consider altering that campaign name to be something more specific. So maybe it's TSA_Indeed. Because in the case that anyone else out there, someone else on the call, decides that they're going to start using campaign URLs to better track the performance of their outreach, and they use the campaign name Indeed, all of that information will also get bundled into this same Indeed campaign. I don't think that's actually happened at this point. I think most of these job postings are TSA. But if there, for some reason, were other folks that just labeled their campaign Indeed, this data would get really mucky. And so my advice to everybody is to, one, learn about and use campaign URLs for all of your outreach. So that's anything you control. So emails, social media posts, all these things. Again, you can shorten the links after you create your campaign URL. But I would use that information and then also give them a campaign name, particularly for links to USA Jobs, because every agency posts their job on USA Jobs. Create a campaign name that is unique to your office. So maybe not even as broad as TSA, maybe you would give it some sort of unique code that is very specific to your office. So that way you could come to this report in the future and, you know, we've got send mass email, or what somebody called one job alerts. This would just be so much more beneficial if it was FEMA job alerts or something like that. But using these tools, you can really get an understanding of how people are, number one, what outreach avenues that you're posting your JOAs on that are performing best for you, and also like where to put your resources in terms of measuring that ROI. Is it worth it for you to spend money on ad campaigns? Maybe not in your case specifically, but is it worth it to keep posting on Monster or Indeed or something like that? Or is it better just to maybe do simple email campaigns? Those are things you can figure out by using these types of reports. So, I know that was a lot of information in approximately 30 minutes, and I know you probably have questions. So I think we have some time where I can attempt to answer questions here, but also if you don't want to ask them publicly, feel free to email us at dap@support.digitalgov.gov. And also, I'm going to go back to my question slide in a moment, but I just wanted to let you know that in the slides that you'll receive, and I don't think I've actually sent them yet to Brody and Alex, so I apologize for that, but I'll get them directly after this. I put a bunch of resources. If you want to try to get access to our system, you can email us at our support address, and I've got webinars on, more specifically, a whole hour dedicated to campaign URLs, a whole hour dedicated to custom reports, and also a link to all our webinars if you're interested in getting to know Google Analytics better. Okay, back to questions. What have we got? Should I try to get my chat up here? Let's see. Okay, looking here. So,
hey Tim, this is Brody from USAJobs, and one of the more common questions that we've had agencies ask us and was asked a few times in the chat was, how do users set up and how do they get a DAP account?
Okay, great question. So if your agency participates in DAP, and at this point we've got all the cabinet agencies, we've got 60 different agencies that are participating with their websites. But if you work for a participating agency, you can, I see the message from Scott there. Yes, NOAA participates, Scott. You can email us here, dap@support.digitalgov.gov, and just say, I'm requesting access for the DAP account, and we will send you back a registration form. And yes, SSA as well, Army as well, SEC, yes, everybody. So we will email you a registration form, and with that registration form, we will then take information and register you for the program. You have to have an agency point of contact approve you. So we have an identified agency point of contact at every agency. And usually it's just a matter of them making sure that you actually work for the agency. And then once they approve you, we can grant you access. And we can usually do that whole process, you know, in a day, in 24 hours. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer for folks for the POCs to reply. But in most cases, we can get you access very quickly.
Now, can an agency have more than one account, or is it a shared account? How does that work?
That's a great question. Okay, so the way you get access to the digital analytics program is actually via your specific email address. So one thing that you'll need to do when you register is you will, if your agency already uses Google. So I know that there's some agencies that are using it. Here at GSA, we use Google as our mail service, and so our email addresses are already associated with Google. But you would take, if your agency is not using Google as their main email or account service, you would then you have to go to a little spot where you associate it for Google Analytics, and then you will have access via your individual email address. So it's not, the account per se is just the tool and all the data in it, but access is granted and permissions are granted at an individual level with email addresses. Other questions, Brody?
Sure. I was just giving a little bit of space in case someone wanted to chime in with a question, but I'll go ahead and mention another one. How much does this cost? And do we need to establish any sort of MOU with GSA? Any agreements?
No,
okay.
No, you do not. So GSA purchases the tool. Our budget is based here centrally with appropriated funds, and our mission is to help other agencies improve their understanding of their web analytics and therefore improve their websites. So not only is there no MOU actually needed, the cost is nothing to any agency, and also there's an OMB mandate that actually requires that all .gov sites be outfitted with DAP code. Unfortunately, we are not quite at 100% yet, but for all the folks that were asking, I apologize if I wasn't super clear. There's a very good chance that your agency participates in DAP, being that it is an OMB requirement. There aren't a whole lot of outliers at this point.
I have a question. You said that most of the agencies that have the .gov, it has to have that DAP code. What about the .mil addresses?
So the OMB requirement, I believe, did not encompass .mil as a mandate, but we do have many .mil websites that are participating. We've got many Army sites, Navy.mil, Coast Guard. So, you know, basically the .mil sites are free to participate, and many of them do. I think it just was a little bit out of the scope specifically of the memo that OMB released a couple years ago.
Thank you. We have an additional question. This is Onyinye from DC Pass Staffing. We want to know, can the DAP site provide analytics on job application data, or is it just limited to page view data?
That's another great question. So, being that DAP is a shared service, one of the things that we have a policy on is that the DAP code cannot be on pages after an authorization. And the reason for that is that the way Google Analytics works is via JavaScript. And JavaScript can, in the same way that it can collect a lot of really useful data, if it were used maliciously, it could potentially collect other, potentially PII, basically. And so in something like a job application, after someone has logged in, GSA does not allow DAP code to be placed on those pages because we don't want to accidentally record any PII. So unfortunately, to answer that question, once you get in further beyond an authorization, you won't see any more data for the Digital Analytics program. You won't see any more data for those pages in the Digital Analytics program account. So right now, for USAJobs, you'd only be able to see when the pages were viewed before an authorization, and in that case, it would eliminate the application process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And to follow up a little bit on that, this is, again, Brody from USAJobs. You know, we do capture a lot of other, let's say, non-DAP metrics during the application process for that part that actually occurs on USAJobs.gov. And we're happy to share those with anyone that is interested in them. We could run queries by individual JOA, by a set of JOAs, by the agency level, and there's a lot that we could provide here. So if you want to talk more about that, feel free to reach out to recruiter-help@USAJobs.gov, and we'll see what we can do for you.
Okay, thank you. We'll reach out. Thanks.
I see there are a lot of questions that are popping up in the chat here. Can I get that back? It disappeared on me.
Hey, this is Mike Brosnan from Air Force. What about tracking coming in from our .com websites or LinkedIn Recruiter or any of those tools? Will it track that information as well? And then a third part to that is, will it track redirect URLs?
Okay. Those are two good questions. So firstly, Google Analytics, so basically the analogy I use is when you travel through the internet, when any of us are just browsing through the internet, and let's say we go to LinkedIn and we see a post and we click through the post and it takes us to that JOA on USA Jobs. The way I imagine it is that we're traveling through the web with a backpack on. And in that backpack, there's a ton of information about us. Where we came from, where we are physically, what kind of technology we're using, how long we're on the pages. All this information accumulates in our backpack. And the way that I sort of explain how Google Analytics works is it opens up that backpack and reads all that information. So the short answer to your question is yes. If someone clicks from a .com website or LinkedIn or Washington Post or even intranet sites, when you arrive at USA Jobs, you have in your backpack this thing called the referrer, which has the information about where you came from when you click the link to get there. And Google Analytics can read that. So you do have information about where you traveled from. The caveat to that is that there are certain technological conditions where the referrer gets taken out of your backpack before you get there. And one of those particular situations that I spoke about is link shorteners. Another one is non-browser-based email clients. So if someone is clicking on a link in Outlook and you don't have campaign URLs put into there, it will not tell you that the person came from Outlook. It will show up as quote-unquote direct traffic, meaning that in theory, they bookmark your page or something like that. But that's not the true case. So there are some confounding factors about how often referrals are correct. The number one way to fix all of those issues is just to use campaign URLs. Because if you use campaign URLs, the data gets collected after the page loads instead of in transit. So, I mean, the data is collected after the page loads anyways, but it's not trying to look at data from in your backpack from your transit. It's when you show up that URL tells Google Analytics the information. Second part of your question for redirects. So Google Analytics does have the capability to track through redirects, but certain kinds of redirects. So 301s and 302s, a permanent redirect you can track through. A temporary redirect sometimes has issues, and worst of all is a meta refresh redirect, which is a kind of redirect that happens dynamically after the page loads, and it's not set as a redirect in the traditional sense. That will not, you won't be able to track through that. But that's a bit of a longer conversation that I'm happy to have on the side. Okay, so other folks that I can see in the chat are asking, are there internal POCs for the DAP accounts? How can we obtain a list? So there are, the DAP team keeps a point of contact for the DAP program at every agency, and you don't have to look them up. You can just email us directly and ask for access, and we will copy them so that they can approve you. You don't have to, in most cases, you don't have to go through them, although there are some that prefer it that way. Like, I think if you work, well, it doesn't matter. You can come to us, we'll include them on the conversation, and then you'll be able to do it. I see a question from Vanessa. Oh, 1 second, sorry. I just want to answer this one. Do you provide any agency-specific training or just this general one? So we do a lot of training. We do a webinar every month on various different topics where we get much more in-depth than I was today. And we also have a 2.5-hour long intro course that we usually offer twice a year, virtually. Everything's all virtually. And it's also recorded. So in the resources page here, I have all our recorded webinars on our YouTube Analytics playlist. And so there are, here's creating your own campaign URL builder, visualizing analytics data. These are the DAP 101 and 201. This is your most basic introductory course. We've got using regular expressions, measuring mobile users, custom segments, custom reports, all kinds of things. So we record everything that we do, and you can find it here. Somebody had just attempted to ask a question, and I cut him off.
Yeah, no, that was me, Tim Brody from USA Jobs. A question that we actually have on our program that LaShawn Dobbins from DHS asked in the chat is if there's a way to aggregate an entire agency's data without looking up each vacancy individually. I know one thing that would help, one thing that actually hurts this is the way that USA Jobs has their URL structured right now. And this goes back to when USA Jobs brought in the website to make it a government website again in roughly 2011. But our URLs don't actually have agency information in them. So if that information is not contained in the URL, is there any way that that DAP or Google Analytics can aggregate multiple vacancies together?
Yeah, so I think you hit
something like regex.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Brody. The best way to be able to do that would be if in the information architecture of the site itself, it contained agency-specific information. Like if, obviously if this said USAJobs.gov/get/jobs/IRS/view details and so on, then you could then just run a search in the report that said, show me all the URL strings that contain IRS. Unfortunately, the way it's set up right now, there's not any type of really unique information that allows Google Analytics to be able to delineate which agency is posting the job. And so part of the reason why I think it would be really beneficial for everyone to use campaign URLs is because you can help aggregate some of that agency data by setting a unique URL that specifically, tells you, like you might have 30 different JOAs, and if you give them all campaign URLs with the same campaign name, that will clump them together in that second report that I showed you and allow you to be able to look at all that information. Now, unfortunately, that's only people who click on the link you control, right? Is that you can only create campaign URLs for outreach that you control, email and social media and job posting on Monster and Indeed and things like that. If somebody just happens to go to USA Jobs and stumbles on your JOA, the page view is going to get attributed just to this URL. And unfortunately, the way it's currently set up, there's no good way for us to delineate which agency that URL belongs to. Now, what you could do, it's a little more advanced, is you could get a listing of all these particular JOA numbers. Let's say you've got 50 current listings, and you can create a filter in the custom report. So this is getting a little advanced here, but in the custom report, you could go here and you can actually set a filter that says only show me results if it matches one of these 50 different JOA numbers. And I could definitely help somebody try to do that. You just have to keep a running tally of all the individual numbers. And I think with the fact that, job postings are a bit fleeting, they're only open for a few weeks or a few months, it would take a lot of effort to keep that list updated for what was current, but it is possible to group them in a filter, but you'd have to enter all that information yourself. I see some people were typing, but it seems like it slowed down a little bit. Kai asked, do you offer individual training for agencies? Yes, we have in the past. If you have a team of, basically if you could guarantee that you can get a team of 15 or more people together, we can do a training similar to this one, except cater it more to your agency needs. We're definitely open to doing that and happy to work with you if you email us. Scott, is there a certificate program for Google Analytics that federal employees can take? So you read my mind, Scott. We actually just released a month ago the Digital Analytics Program certification course. So you can watch all our trainings and read our study guide where we've laid out all of the information about how to use Google Analytics and specifically the DAP account, because the DAP account is a whole different thing than a normal GA implementation. And there is a certification test that you can take to become a DAP certified user. I think we've got some people that may need to mute. I hear some pots and pans or something. Scott, the certification program that we offer is just for DAP, but there is also a Google Analytics program called the Google Analytics Individual Qualification that you could look up and take that. I've taken that exam before. It's not specific to federal employees. It's just a general Google Analytics course. I believe the Google. Sorry, I was just going to say I believe the Google Analytics course is free. The Google Analytics individual qualification is a free cost, or a no-cost exam that I believe you can take.
All right, so we have just a couple minutes left as we are slated to end at 2 o'clock. But I do want to chime in and let everyone know that we will be sending out the slides and follow-up information. Realistically, this will probably come out at the end of next week. But we hope to put some more of these together. I've gotten a lot out of this. It's kind of reconfirmed some of the processes that we've had at USA Jobs. But I look forward to kind of this starting a larger conversation. Because this is really just the tip of the iceberg here. There's a lot more that we could do. And as one of the participants asked, there's a lot within the application process that we could look at. When we're looking at page views and some of these web metrics, we're talking very much quantitative information. But then there's that qualitative side that comes out of how far did someone make it through the application process? Where are they hired? How long did they stay? Where did they come from? And with that, we can learn really how we could recruit better and identify those top sources of talent. So I want to thank everybody for their time, and especially thank Tim for making himself available and putting together this wonderful, not just slideshow, presentation. If anyone has any questions, please, you can reach out to us at USA Jobs at recruiter-help@USAJobs.gov. And for those that wanted kind of a direct connection to the DAP program, they could be reached out to, or you could email them at DAP, that's DAP, at support.digitalgov.gov. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tim. And I look forward to the next time we can do this.